Hello, my name is John Quanrud, and today I'll be discussing a Philosophy Bites podcast. It's Evidence-Based Medicine by John Worrall. In it, John Worrall will discuss evidence-based medicine as being what we use in the medical community today to figure out if certain things, medicines, surgeries, etc., are effective or not. And in it, they use two types of experiments, controlled and randomly controlled experiments. The main difference is that randomly controlled experiments have two groups of people that are randomly put into the two groups, usually using a random number sequencing machine. Worrall discusses that there are known and unknown factors, known factors being what we know going into the experiment, and unknown factors being things that we can't plan for because we don't have prior knowledge and we don't have any understanding of what can truly occur. Worrall is not an advocate of randomly controlled experiments, but he does list the pros and the cons of randomly controlled experiments. He discusses that the pro being there is no personal bias from a human being involved in the randomly assorting people, and that's a good thing in his eyes. But what he views as a major con is that it doesn't factor in all the unknown factors. You don't necessarily know what could happen because you've never really run the experiment before, and with a lot of these different things in the medical community that we're doing, we're still on the frontier, so to speak. So Worrall has this idea that random controlled experiments have this inflated view of themselves, and that oftentimes people accredit way too much to them to truly be sufficient, and accurate. That he kind of says that you might run an experiment and you're basing it off the fact that you think it's correct, but in reality, there might be a completely different factor affecting it that you don't know of. So, there's all of that. As far as the real-world application goes, I think that it's essential that we question these things, especially, everyday life, but taking a philosophical approach to questioning, scientific measures that we use to, figure out something as simple as, should you take the aspirin or should you not take the aspirin? What effects is that going to have later on in life? And the impact on the world is that if we have an understanding of what type of experiments are effective, because we know evidence-based experiments are effective. And so if we take controlled-based, specifically controlled-based, eliminate randomly controlled, because it's kind of an archaic notion, but we take controlled-based and use it effectively, that we can, make great achievements in the field of medicine. And so, my personal thought is that I side with Worrall, and I think that he, has a lot of really good, valid points concerning the topic. He points out how there's a lot of random guesswork going on with randomly controlled experiments, and how there's a lot of holes in it. And so if we can simply just look at that and say, okay, well, that's not very systematic, because we think as humans that if we try to simulate nature and make it randomly chaotic and we leave it up to chance, but he says, well, you might have a machine that sorts it out, but put two groups of people and one group is predominantly younger and one is older, and that might have a huge factor on if you're testing out a drug, because the younger generation is going to heal quicker than the older generation. So I side with him in stating that if we take a more systematic, controlled way of using it, that evidence-based medicine is extremely effective. It doesn't necessarily solve everything, perhaps, especially right now with our limited understanding of the human body, because we're still figuring things out to this day. But I think in conclusion that it has a very meaningful impact on our everyday lives, and that Worrall was correct in a lot of his statements. Thank you.